so much, Dana.
You got it. Absolutely. Yeah, and so for those that are on, if they're really on, love to see faces. If you wanted to turn cameras on, and then I'll share my screen here in a minute. I do have a slide deck just to have, talking points to go over, but we do want to make it conversational if you've got questions. So feel free to raise your hand on Teams here, and or put some notes in chat, and we'll monitor both. But also I see Sierra, if you're really on, like you could probably teach this class based on all that we've worked on recently together. Um, Let me see here. So this is always the fun part, is ensuring that I get the right screen, right? To share. Can you see a PowerPoint presentation? Yay.
Yes.
Okay, and let me just, this is always the trick. If I put it into the mode of presentation, is it still there?
Yep.
Okay, yay, when technology actually works. I love it. Um, so yeah, so thank you. The exciting conversation of HR, right? And compliance, that's not always the word people love to hear, but it's important to be compliant. So wanted to just again say thank you for just even the interest. And so as Tasha said, Dina Simon, my HR company is Simon Says HR. I just have a fun last name that we get to play on the Simon Says. And so what I wanted to do today is definitely keep it conversational if there's questions along the way that also are not necessarily a part of what, if there's things outside of my slide deck here. But I'm going to get into the things that are happening in 2026. Hard to believe we're already in November. And I'm trying to push my presentation forward. There we go. So many of you have probably heard about PFML. So of course, it's something similar to like FMLA. So it's been very confusing for people, but it's PFML, which is the paid family medical leave. And it's something that does go into effect in January of 2026 for us here in Minnesota. We're not the first state to do this, so it's not the first rodeo for many like insurance companies and plan administrators. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but I kind of organized this based on dates and rates and just general information. So some of the things just to kind of share from a dates perspective is, and why we kind of wanted to try and have this conversation as early in November as possible, is there is a date of November 10th that if you as an employer decided that you didn't want to go with the state of Minnesota plan, you would need to opt out of the Minnesota plan by November 10th and pick a private insurance company. And there's a list of private insurance companies that I can share the link and stuff on. Being that today is November 4th, like it may be a really tight timeline to be able to like get in with one of those private insurance companies to get your rates and figure out if you could truly go private. But there may still be a chance if that's something you want to look at. I would also say just to keep in mind for that. So next year around the same time, if you decided, hey, I went with the state in 2026 and maybe I want to explore those potential rates to go private, this is not something that's going to go away. So just keeping in mind, next fall, if you wanted to look to see competitive rates and look to go to a private insurance, you have that option. So you can go with the state of Minnesota plan or you can go private. And then there's a group of private insurers that have been vetted by the state. So they made that really nice to make it a little bit easier to go through. The other thing is if you offer any other types of benefits, to truly just talk to your benefit broker, because they have probably been asked thousands of times this question. And sometimes it can be one of the pieces of just benefits that they can look to help to try and get competitive bids. So that's a date that's coming up. So then what happens if Go ahead. Was that my voice or does somebody have a question? Maybe it was me. I'm getting feedback. So November 10th, what happens when that date comes and goes? Then you're just automatically enrolled in the state plan. So the state's just going to assume that you're going to be working with them. And there are a couple things, and I'll talk to that. Well, actually, I can speak to that now. So it's in effect as of January 1. So there's really nothing you need to do. There's not much you need to do between now and then. There's a couple things that you need to do. But January 1 is when the benefit actually goes into effect from a contribution perspective and when employees could start to take the benefit. So there's nothing in November or December that happens there. It starts January 1. And the first premiums are due in April for the first quarter. And I don't know that I have this on the slide, so I'll just talk to you about it now, is in December, sharing with employees that this is something that's happening. So the state does have some sample like email letters, and then also posters that you're supposed to have up so that people understand what is happening with this PFML and that it's a benefit that's coming to them. So is actually another date that would be in December to ensure that you're sharing with your employees about PFML. And then any questions right now just on like the dates? Otherwise, I'm going to go to rates.
Yes, I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Does it matter how many employees you have and if they are full-time or part-time employees?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is for all employees. So if you have full-time and part-time employees, they're all factored into this benefit. So the state of Minnesota is going to take a look at like your payroll dollars from 2025 to come up with some, baselines to start figuring out what your payroll run has been. And so it is for part-timers, it is also for full-timers, but there are some advantages to smaller businesses. So smaller businesses with under 30 employees, for the most part, get this reduced rate of 0.66. And so it's based on payroll dollars. So if you have $100,000, so the example, like if you have $100,000 in payroll, just to make it easy, in wages, then for a year, then it's $660 is what that insurance rate that you're paying at that 66% or 0.66, sorry. Um, there's a couple caveats on that is if it's a small business that has really highly compensated employees, they may fall into this larger bracket. But this is one way to kind of look at where might your rates fall if you should plan for being in a small business rate structure or if you think you're going to be in the larger rate structure. So based on head count, and so most of those that are on this call, a lot of us are small businesses and are operating under that 30 employees. But if you're over 30 employees, it does fall to the larger business. And so the rate, so figuring out kind of what rate, and there is a rate calculator on the state's website too, so I'll make sure and follow up when we show that link. So as you're figuring out where you would fall on the rates, both of these, the small business and the larger business, you can split the fee. It's not all needing to be 100% employer paid. The employee also can have a contribution. And most companies are doing kind of that 50-50 split where the employer is paying for a piece of it and the employee is paying for a piece of it. Some larger organizations may cover the cost for all of it if they can, but you can do a 50-50 split. You can't ask your employees to do more than 50%, but it is something that it's a benefit to them. And so there is a line item through payroll that you can set up that they have their contribution. So that's part of the conversation and figuring out how you want to set it up and then making sure your employees are knowledgeable of it. Any questions on the rate piece?
I have a question just kind of about more so like on the premium side. So I know that we have to pay that through the unemployment insurance website. Is
Yep.
that manually, or is there a way to automate that process somehow? And will we be notified, or we just have to like mark it in our calendars and make sure that we pay it in April?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so however you're paying right now your unemployment taxes, and so like if you're using a payroll provider that is doing that for you, you can give them administrator rights to be able to do the same.
Okay.
And so that's definitely, that would be part of your checklist is to, so going into the state website, even if you have a private insurer, but going into the state website to open up your administrator account. You've got your unemployment account, and that's where like the dollars will flow. So you'll start seeing like, here's what your unemployment was, and then here's your PFML, and I'm sure you can push it through the same way. But there is an administrator portal under the PFML that you need to set up as well. And that administrator portal is where you actually can go in and take a look at where somebody might have filed, like asked for a claim to be under PFML. It's where you then would be able to see if they were approved or denied. So that's where all that kind of administrative stuff is, all the paperwork. It just won't have and it will have some reports probably with dollars in it, but that's not where the funding will come and go. And you can designate other people as your administrator. Just a couple other conversations, and totally open to questions on this. So, I would tell you that PFML is a really great thing. Again, we're not the only state that has done this. It really gives people an opportunity, and obviously the easiest one to talk about is if somebody goes out on maternity leave. Employers that don't have who have a small population don't fall under where they have to do a paid FMLA. And so this gives an opportunity for people to go out on a leave, medical leave, to care for others. It has to be a bona fide lead, and we'll talk or leave, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But it gives them an opportunity. It gives them an opportunity to go out on a leave and have some payment, some contribution to, have dollars coming in. It is something that, again, they're paying into as an employee, and it's something that the employer is paying into. And so it really is a good thing to allow, people to go out on leave to take care of themselves, to take care of family members, etc. It's also to really understand that, similar to if somebody went out on a PF or on an FMLA, or if somebody had to go out, if somebody had to go out on a um, like a short-term disability leave, all of those things have to be a qualified event, and somebody's making the determination on, did that really qualify as an event for somebody to go out? And so if it's the state of Minnesota, if I'm your employee and I go out on a leave for whatever reason, I'm filling out this paperwork and I'm submitting it to the state, or I'm submitting it to, if you're with Mutual of Omaha, like whatever that private insurance company might be. I'm submitting it as the employee to the private insurer, and they're making the determination on, is this a bona fide leave that would fall under PFML? So the good news there also is, you as a business owner or sitting in that HR seat, like, you're going to learn enough about what would qualify as one of these leaves, but you're not going to be the one that is making the final determination. It's either somebody sitting at the state or somebody sitting at the insurance provider to say, yep, this is a bona fide leave. So that takes some of the good cop, bad cop out of the situation as well. And that's where I think, employers at first were like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to take this leave. Why would they not? So I just go back to say it has to be a real reason for the leave, and there's paperwork that needs to be filled out. And so it's not that I'm, out sick for 7 days with a cold. It has to be a little bit stronger of a need to be out, and there's somebody else that's going to be monitoring that for you. While somebody is out, so similar to if you had like a short-term disability or or had some type of a FMLA program, whether you were required to by law or not, during the time that somebody is out, there's a couple things that are at play. And that is, providing them their job to come back to, and then while they're out, they're being compensated. So they're also being compensated while they're out, similar to like unemployment. And that's where I think it's great the unemployment department is kind of managing this. It's very similar to unemployment. So if you leave a job and you qualify for unemployment, you're getting a certain percent of what your pay was through the unemployment department, and it's a check from the state that's coming to you, similar with PFML. So you're on the state plan and you're approved on a PFML. Your dollars are coming through that department, so they're not coming through the company any longer during that time, unless you're stacking on any like PTO time and opportunity to be whole within that time that I'm out, as an example. So there's a calculation on it on, based on my compensation, how much will I get while I'm out on PFML? And if it's not whole, could I still take some of my PTO time or vacation time? And so the ability to stack those kind of benefits is an option. So there may be some payroll dollars that are still coming through the employer, but the primary benefit is being paid, the PFML is being paid by the state or by the private insurance company if that's your plan. So that's where the pay is coming from during that time. And again, there's somebody that's going to be working with you either from the state or the private insurance company to help you like determine all of this and make those decisions. So questions on that. So PFML, this is, just a couple of slides on some general stuff, but the rate information, and again, in the links we can show, the state has a lot of really great information out there. They've got the sample employee notifications. They've got the sample posters that you can be putting up both in-house, if you're in-house and have a place where you're posting things. If you have an intranet or a payroll provider, an HRIS system that you want to put the information in there, but notifying people that this is something that is happening, because in January there's going to be an employee contribution, so there's going to be there's going to be a contribution, and out of payroll, your employees are going to start seeing that, so they need to be notified ahead of time as to why. So there's got to be some questions. Stephen, I see a hand up.
Sorry, I came in late, so I'm trying to understand, where do I go to purchase this for my employees? Where do I go and do this?
Where do you go to set up your accounts?
Yeah, I guess to set up the account, this will be the first time you're doing it.
Sure. Yeah, and so what I'll do is I'll go off in a minute and I can pull up the URL and I can share it in the chat. And so yes, so this is the first time that some are hearing of it. And so that's also why, Tashi and team wanted to get this conversation out there, because it is something that goes into effect in January, which we can't believe we're already in November, so it's not that far off.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll share the URL for you to go in. And so, so like with that, First time you're hearing it. So just knowing that it starts January 1. It's for all employers that have over one employee. It's for full-time, part-time employees. And then, just figuring out if you fit into the small business bucket or a larger business bucket. One of the other things that I'll say for any of the small businesses that are here, not only is there the reduction in the rate of what the insurance is going to cost you, there also is an opportunity if you do have somebody that actually qualifies for a PFML leave next year, there is an opportunity for you to apply for a grant for some assistance to put towards, if I have to hire a temp in to do the work. So there's also an opportunity to request for some assistance if you do have a bona fide lead. And I see a couple more hands raised. So Kenneth.
Super quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Super quickly, we do have a question in the chat. PJ asked, does this kick in as soon as the employee starts working? What if they are with the company for less than 20 weeks and want to take a PFML? How does this work in those cases?
Yes, great question. So it is something that happens immediately. So we've got a couple clients that have individuals that are actually going out on maternity leave this year in November and December. And so they'll go out on whatever this year's benefit looks like with their employer. But then as of January, they are able to take PFML leave into this new year. And so it is something that is available. And again, it is something that has to be a bona fide leave. And so it has to be a major medical situation or a major life situation where somebody needs that employee to take time off to care for them. So there are rules around it. But great question. So it does go into effect in January and people can start taking the benefit.
And then I think Kenneth had his hand up.
Yeah, Kenneth. Somebody else also has their hand up.
Yes, it's me. You say that this is going to apply for all the employees. But what about if I have a business, I am the owner, I have a payroll, but it's just me, the owner in the payroll, how that's going to work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, how do you do payroll now? How are you paying yourself? Are you running yourself through like a QuickBooks payroll?
Yes, exactly. That's what I do.
Yeah. So I would, so there's a couple stipulations based on like a sole proprietor and stuff. So I would actually do you have an accountant that you're working with?
Yes, I do.
So I would first talk to your accountant on like because if you're paying unemployment tax for yourself, it's again very similar where you may pay for a PFML on as well, but there are some stipulations with how your organization is set up from an S corp and those types of things that help make a determination on whether or not you as the solopreneur in your business whether or not you qualify for this.
Okay. And what about the contractors? If I hire some, contractors for my business, how is that apply for contractors too? It's just so the employees with a W-2.
Yeah, great question. So this is just for W-2. And I'm actually I'm going to stop sharing for a second and then I'm going to pull up the website. So it is for W-2 employees only. And so I know one of the potential questions is the benefits of W-2 versus having, 1099s versus W-2s. But if somebody's a 1099, this does not apply to them.
Okay.
That was my question. That was my question.
That was my question as well, but I actually have a piggyback on that, Dana. So Does this apply to employees of nonprofit organizations as well? Because I know there's for-profit corporations and like there's certain ways that nonprofit organizations report for from an employee standpoint. So it doesn't matter the type of the organization, or is it just across the board for everyone as long as they're W-2?
Yeah, great question. So it's my understanding most nonprofits also will fall under this. There are some stipulations. There are some stipulations for like seasonal employees. So there are a couple of areas where a certain group of like a certain population might not have the same benefit just based on their classification. But I do believe most nonprofits fall under this as well. And I'm just trying to get my screen back here so I can share my screen to show you the website. But great question. Okay. Technology was going so great. I was on the website. I think I just have too many screens open. Hold on. Here's the, and then let me share this screen. So share. Okay, so do you see the Minnesota page?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the just paid leave Minnesota. There's a tremendous amount of information out here. So somebody asked, like, how do I set this up? Here's where you access your account to get your account set up. And if you already have a unemployment login, you'll start seeing in that section the PFML information, but you still have to set up a PFML administrator account. And so the employer account here, this is great information. So it shows you that the unemployment portal for your employer account, this is where like the wages and all this information is all the dollars will kind of flow through. But the paid leave administrator account, this is where, again, the leave applications will be. It will show you if somebody was approved or denied, if you needed to apply for a small employer grant because somebody actually took the time off. It's there as well. And then employer resource toolkit. Here is a great information again out here as far as the the posters and notices. So you are supposed to notify your employees by the 1st of December. There's postcards, there's email notifications. You are also supposed to get a signature back that you have shared with all your current employees. And so with that, because it's something that goes into effect and there's going to be dollars contributed out of their paycheck, so that's why the notification to the employees ahead of time. Come January, when you're hiring somebody new moving forward, it's just, again, hopefully you're updating your employee handbook and it's part of your handbook, and there's not then a special form that you would need them to fill out. It would just hopefully be part of your policy book. Here is where you can figure out your rate calculation. So just a tremendous amount of information out here, but you wouldn't know where it was unless somebody tried to help point it out to you. Let's see where it is. There is for employers, let's see where this is. There is the the list of the other insurance providers. If I can find that quickly. Here is some information about like hospitality and some of the so seasonal, like some of the where it may or may not qualify for this. But I haven't seen anything from a nonprofit perspective. Equivalent plans. So this is where if you chose not to go with the state of Minnesota, and I'll also share with you is if you've missed the boat on that, don't worry about it. It really has been kind of 50-50, where companies have said, oh my gosh, I absolutely went to a private insurance plan and I feel I saved money. And then a lot of my clients are just like, it's so new, I'm going to just go with the state for this year. And it really didn't seem like it was that much of a rate difference. So don't panic if you feel that that's something that you missed out on. I just, again, wanted you to know for this time next year, you would probably have the opportunity to opt out of the state and go private if you chose to. But here are already vetted, like list of approved vendors. So these ones here would be the first place to go to if you quickly wanted to see if somebody could help you out to look at the private. This Shelter Point is a really common one that many of my clients have gone with. So hopefully that was helpful, just sharing sharing where the website is. So lots of tools out here. So just paidleave.mn.gov. Any other questions on PFML? Okay, so then let me go back to my slide presentation here. And I will go back to share. I think. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint again?
Yep.
Okay, great. Let me go
Yeah,
into.
I can see it.
Okay, so one of the other things that is coming up in January is a new meal and rest break period. So that's one more thing that's coming up. And it's just stronger language. So there's a few things like before there was, I believe it was 30 minutes if it was an 8-hour shift or more. So now it's a 6-hour shift. So this really comes into play. Like if you have salaried exempt employees, you're still supposed to encourage for all classifications, certainly that people take the time that they need for meal and rest. It's harder to make salaried people, take the time to do that. It comes more into play from an hourly perspective that you are actually, people are taking the breaks as they need to. And that you're understanding, just how your workforce is based on what are their scheduled shifts, and making sure that they're having those paid breaks, or unpaid break for their meal break and what that looks like. And then with that, just making sure that, like, again, your timekeeping system is up to date. So your timekeeping system, so you're tracking, are people taking breaks when they need to? And then really it comes down to who is managing and supervising employees so that they know, we really need people to be taking these breaks, and enforcing them, so that you're not getting into trouble. And when you get into trouble is, if you have a disgruntled employee who leaves and then claims, hey, I was never given an opportunity ever to take a break. Like those are the times when, people want to bring those things up. So just being sure that you've got really clear handbooks that say we're abiding by this, we're enforcing it. And that you've got your timekeeping system set up to do the same, and that your supervisors are trained on the rules. Any questions on that?
Do you have any recommendations for good time tracking systems? We are using one right now, but kind of exploring other options because we're not sure that it's giving us like everything that we need.
What are you using now?
Zoom Shift.
Okay. It's so hard. What I would say is use a time tracking system that works well with whatever you're using for payroll.
Okay, we're using QuickBooks there.
Yeah, because if you like that, that's like when your payroll system talks nicely to your timekeeping system. I just think that's such a benefit.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still kind of doing some things manually that I'm
Manual.
like, I feel like this could be better.
Tashi, what you had your hand up.
No, I was just gonna say to Sierra, like we use QuickBooks timekeeping as well, and it works for both contractors as well as W-2 employees. And if there's an app, they can actually clock in on their app. It's very much seamless. So
Nice.
you might want to look in, yeah, and it's not that much more expensive to once you have everything going on. So
Nice.
Okay, cool.
And I know I
Thanks.
have clients that use, I think it's called When I Work.
Okay.
So that's another one that we've had clients use. But yeah, so that's I always go back to like, you know, what will talk the best to the payroll process. The other thing that is happening, but not in January, is there's something called Minnesota Secure Choice Retirement Program. And they're encouraging employers just to know about this. And there is more information also on a website. And it actually talks about a more staged approach where they're not just mandating everybody in Minnesota to do this. But all this is if an employer has more than 5 employees, the state wants employers to be offering an opportunity for employees to have some type of a way to contribute to a retirement plan. So if you already have some type of a retirement plan, great, then you don't need to worry about this. If you don't have a retirement plan and you are growing past 5 employees, it's something you'll have to worry about down the line. They're going with larger employers first to look at to enforce it, and the smaller employers come later. So I think it's actually in the end of 26 or early 27 that they're really going to try and enforce for smaller employers. But again, the employer does not need to contribute. It's just something that employees can opt in to have that opportunity to have a way to contribute to a retirement plan. And Tasha, you probably know, you might even know more about this.
no, I actually did not know about this, but I was gonna ask you if they're kind of circling back to not the Pay Family Medical Leave Act. If you don't, as an employer, if you don't set up your account by January 1, is there some type of penalty? Because what are the consequences of not having an account?
Yeah. So for the PFML, they're knowing like what your payroll run is and stuff because you've got reports going to the state, right? So if you don't automatically send your April 30th dollars in, however you set that up, you will get a notification, I'm sure, in May saying here's what you owe. So I believe that's how they'll find you. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. PJ asked, is there a way for smaller employers, including single person businesses to join right now?
To join what?
To join right now.
To join the PFML.
Yes.
So you can join and set up your stuff, but you can't take a PFML paid leave right now, because it's just not available until January. Does that answer?
Sorry, they meant to join the retirement plan.
Oh, great question. So I would imagine so this particular Minnesota secure choice retirement program, I'm not that's a great question. I'm not sure actually, but you could take a look at, like, if you just Google Minnesota Secure Choice Retirement, it'll take you to it. But that's a great question on if you can opt in. I would imagine at least by January, if not now, you could opt in sooner versus later. It's an optional thing until it's more of an enforced thing.
Thank you. And then we have one more question in the chat. Sarah asked, is the retirement program for part-time employees as well or only for full-time?
Yeah, great question. And I'm sure I have that in an FAQ if it's I believe it's based on 5 or more full-time equivalent employees. But again, I think it's something you can opt into if you have less employees and if you have some part-timers in there. They just want an opportunity for employees to have a place to contribute from a retirement perspective. There also are so there's this plan, but then you could also talk again if you've been exploring any type of 401k or anything, you could talk to again like that type of 401k like broker vendor to say, hey, what's available, so that you're looking at all of your options. And I do have a really nice I have something that I can share for follow-up that has a lot of the FAQ, and there is a broker that would be happy to talk to anybody.
Yeah, if everybody wants to put their emails in the chat, I can send an email with um, Diane's information and like the YouTube link for this recording so everybody can look at it and any other links that come up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just keep asking questions, but just some of the other just common HR 101 things, to avoid is and we can talk through a little bit more on this, but the misclassifying employees, so this goes back to like, are they employees exempt, non-exempt, or also are they independent contractors? So really looking at like, how are we classifying our employees? And so that goes back to, are they exempt, non-exempt, so are they hourly or salary? There's determinations there. And then also, are they W-2 or are they an independent contractor? And I'm open to conversation on that because I think that was one of the things that might have been in the questions, just leading up to this. And it's a question that I sure get a lot, and a few people that I work with that are on this webinar know that we've talked through it a little bit. But when you're looking at should I have a 1099 or a W-2 employee, there's just a couple factors to immediately think through, and that is, who is this person? Are they truly a contractor? Am I a client of theirs? Do they have other clients that they're working with? Or am I their sole provider of their income? Like they have no time because they're working 40 plus hours a week for me and that we see no end in sight. Like those would be some of the things that you would be thinking on. If they're set up though as an independent contractor, they have their own insurance, they're invoicing you not by necessarily, maybe it's hours worked, but it's you've got an allotted dollar amount that you're paying them for work done. Could be project rate, it could still be hours. But again, they're maybe they're working 20 hours a week and not necessarily 40, and they have other clients. Those are some of the determinations. There are some benefits to having employees as well. Contractors, you have less control over really everything. They dictate here's when I'm available, versus an employee you saying here's your shift and when I need you to be where I need you to be. So with that contractor, it's really more of a relationship on, what's your availability, how do we get you scheduled in, and a little bit more of that relationship. You still, with contractors, certainly can say you're going to be facing our clients. Therefore, here's how we'd love for you to show up, from, a dress code perspective, professional perspective, how you're going to communicate, how you're going to, like a statement of work on how you're going to report information back to us. So you can still have contractor agreements. You just definitely have more control if it's an employee relationship versus a contractor relationship. And really, I think it goes down to a couple of those key factors on, am I the sole provider of this person's pay because they're working for me full time? And then if that answer is yes, then it is a question on, do we need to move this person to a W-2 employee? Because that's really the relationship that we have here. So definitely open to questions because it will make more sense if there are real life situations. And if it's clear, then awesome. I know too. Go ahead.
I was just, sorry, Dana, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, maybe if you could touch a little bit more on, I think there tends to be like a blurred line between an actual contract, a contract employee, a 1099 employee versus a vendor or someone that's actually just providing a service to you, because they both use like 1099 forms at the end of the year for taxes. You kind of record what you pay them that way. So for instance, I can have a partner relationship with you, a
Yep.
contract that says you'll provide HR advisory services
Right.
to our clients. That's more of a partnership. But then there is like for instance, a contractor that's available, like you said, 20 hours a week. Can you just because it could be, I think sometimes people get confused because they feel like contracts or vendors are normally companies versus individuals, and
Right.
individuals can be a vendor. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit more. You can do it better than I can.
Well, I'm not sure I can, but I get what you mean. So yeah, I mean, I'll just give like a example. I have a graphic designer whom I have worked with for years. She does have like her own LLC set up. And so she is a vendor, right? Like, so she's somebody who's a vendor, but I 1099 her. So a great example.
Yep.
If I needed to bring let's say I had a project and let's say I was overhauling my websites or something, and let's say I had needed to bring on a contractor, somebody who, was going to spend 20 hours a week with me for 3 months to help get this project done. That individual person that was working on this project and might have some of the same skills as my graphic designer who has her own LLC. But this contractor, who might work 20 hours a week and is doing this work for me, that's more of like a 1099 individual contractor, if that makes sense.
Yep. And I just want to kind of piggyback on that, and this may not be something that's your sector, that might go more into the legal component, but um, a contract employee that's not a vendor can, if they leave your place of employment, your organization, they can file for unemployment from you, correct? Because
As
technically they're an employee.
no, not a 1099 contractor.
Hmm.
A W-2 employee can.
Yeah, it's because, and I'll talk to you about that because I actually had a personal experience with that where a contractor was able to file.
So I'd love to talk to you about that. It's not my understanding as a 1099 independent contractor that they could file for unemployment.
I mean, they didn't win, but they actually
Sure.
did. So I'll talk to you
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk offline. Typically a 1099, so a 1099, because you're paying them. So in my example, I bring on a contractor for 20 hours a week for 3 months, and I'm paying this person, let's say it's $50 an hour, just to make math easy. They're responsible then for paying their taxes and whatever they need to do when they file at the end of the year on that work that we did. I will give them a 1099 form at the end of the year saying here's the work that we did and what we paid you. But they're responsible then for whatever insurance and taxes that they owe all on their own. It's just a line item, that top line, $50 an hour times however many hours they've invoiced me for, and I'm just paying an invoice, even on that individual 1099 person. When they sign up as a whether it be a vendor or a 1099, there is that W-9 form that they fill out, and so that's where like an LLC or somebody who's set up to do multiple contract type work typically has an employer like an EIN number, and a lot of times independent contractors may still just have a social security number.
Super quick, I know Kenneth, you had your hand up a couple times. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I was, it was answered. It was just about the contractors. Would they be, equal as the W-2, employees, far as the taxes?
Yeah, so nope, they're on their own. That's one of the, I mean, so that's one of the benefits. I have a new client who's just starting up too, and she's like, you know, and then she's in the medical space, and she's like, it's going to take me 90 days plus to get money in. And so I'm trying to decide, you know, is it a W-2 or is it a 1099? And wanting to make the right decisions, because a W-2, you have payroll right away. A 1099, it may be a monthly invoice that you're paying. And so it just does go back to the rules of, you know, what's the working relationship and who sets the schedule. So like a 1099 also has a lot of flexibility. If they say, you know, I can't work on Tuesday because I have something going on, it's a different relationship where if an employee, you know, does a no show a couple times, you have an HR issue then on how you're dealing with your W-2 employee. With a contractor, you certainly can fire a contractor and say, you know, if this isn't working, we're not working together anymore. But you also probably have some type of a contractor agreement, and it may be a 30-day like notification that either one of you has to give each other. So there's just a different agreement on how you're working. I think there might have been another hand up.
Kenneth, it could be a 2-week though, right? If you wanted it to be, right? As far as notice. If you
For a
want to,
contractor?
yes.
Yeah, and that goes back to whatever your agreements are with your
Sure,
contractor.
sure.
Yeah.
One more question. When would you know okay, say for instance, you have a contractor and then they're working a lot of hours. You know what I mean? When would you know to switch them over to a W-2?
Yeah, you know, that's where as the business owner, you know, you would know like, wow, this person's really becoming a major component to our organization. They've got, you know, they're handling a lot of responsibility, they're making business decisions, they're working a lot of hours. I bet we're their only client. Those are key factors to have that conversation to say, hey, do we need to visit moving you to a W-2?
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Dana, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What if you have employees that are out of state? Will this, going back to the new paid medical leave thing, would that apply to your employees that are that your remote employees that are out of state because the company is based in Minnesota?
That's a great question, and you don't quote me on this, but I believe that the employee has to do work in Minnesota more than 50% of their time for them to qualify for it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so if even though you're a Minnesota-based company, if you've got somebody who's living in Wisconsin, I believe it's 50%. Yeah, but great question. Just going back just from a time perspective, so a couple more things that I have on here, and we can skip around and talk about other things too. But when you do have W-2 employees and you're responsible for them, I'm a huge fan, have been for the last 30 years of my professional career, because I've had a lot of clients and people that I've been responsible for that haven't done what they've needed to do. So I-9 documentation is super important. An I-9 shows the proof to right to work in the United States. It's not anything new. And so if you have in like your HRIS system, a lot of times they have the ability to do what's called E-Verify. So E-Verify makes it super easy. The employee puts in information on the onboarding. The employer puts some information in and presses send, and it goes through to the Department of Homeland Security and validates the documentation and says, great, this person gets thumbs up, or hey, this person, there's a question mark. So there is something called E-Verify. There typically is a cost to that, and people have pros and cons on whether or not to use that type of system, but I'm just sharing that it's there. If you're not using that type of system, then you're still probably doing one of two things or both. You may have a ADP or a Paychex or a Gusto, any of the payroll software platforms that may give a electronic I-9 out in onboarding. And so your employee might do a little bit of stuff in onboarding, but there still is this employer piece to finalize the employer piece of the I-9. And then what are you doing with the I-9 when you're done with that? Are you keeping it in the payroll system, which is great, but also are you keeping a paper file of it, which also can be great. But making sure that you know the rules of the road of I-9s. An employee is supposed to complete their I-9 before or on the first day of employment, and you as an employer are supposed to complete it within 3 days of their employment. And so we all have situations where somebody shows up their first day and they might not have their documentation, and you say, oh, that's okay, bring it in tomorrow. But tomorrow, what if they don't show up? And what if tomorrow they don't have it either? So by day 3, if you don't have it, you're supposed to like literally end their employment until they come back with the documentation. And then how you're filling out your I-9s, and making sure that you're doing your part. And so there is training. It's not that hard, but it is a key area that I just strongly encourage people to have a really good eye on to make sure that their processes are good. Anybody wants me to walk into their office or Zoom with me to talk through it, it's just a huge passion because it's something that gets very out of hand very quickly if somebody isn't managing and monitoring it. So I'm happy to answer any questions about I-9s.
We have a couple questions in the chat. There's a question, if I hire freelancers or creative specialists for short-term projects, what factors determine whether they should be employees?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're doing freelancers for some project work, and freelancers is also a fancy word for contractor, I think a lot of times those can be 1099s because it's normally project based, and they're probably freelancing for others. And so, without knowing the specifics, I think a freelancer probably normally falls under a contractor.
Stefan, I know I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Okay, well, I can keep going. A couple of the other just bullet points I have on this slide is, so again, like failing to track hours, including remote hours. So just making sure you're really understanding when are people working. And I'll just give an example is, if you've got an hourly employee that is bringing work home because they need to get caught up, and they're working 8 hours in a weekend, and they're not recording their hours, but they're really working. It's those kinds of conversations to really make sure that you're understanding what's happening, because if they're truly working, and in that example they might be on overtime at that point, and so if they're truly working, they should truly be paid. So just understanding. And as owners, you can watch for things like, do you have an hourly employee that's sending you an email at 10 o'clock from home when they obviously, well, not obviously, but they're probably not supposed to be working at that time. And so if you're seeing those types of situations, really just checking in on, hey, are you working hours that you're not including? Because that's where like the wage theft stuff comes in, is if you're knowledgeable that people are working and they're not recording their hours, you can be culpable of that because they're working. And that goes back to just training of supervisors and stuff to be monitoring that as well. And then some of the others, just inconsistency on enforcing policies. If you're going to have policies, they need to be enforced. So we do a lot of employee handbooks, and we would tell you that less is more, making sure you've got all the federal and state requirements, so they're real policies. But if you have 200 pages of fluff and you're not enforcing your policies, then why have them? And that can also get you into trouble, because it looks like there, isn't fairness across the board. You might be enforcing it for someone, but not for somebody else. So just, understanding what policies are and being consistent in them. And then the outdated handbook. And so, I can speak to through like our Elevate Hennepin, we're doing a ton of handbooks. And so it's not a terrible process to go through. We try to make it really easy. But in January with these new policies, just making sure you have a refresh of an employee handbook so that you understand, again, what are the working rules and how are we applying them, and making sure your employees know them. Another is, poor documentation of performance issues and terminations. And when I have clients that will call me and say, oh my gosh, I think I'm at, a termination with this employee, the first question always is going to be, well, talk to me about, how have you handled documentation? How have you handled performance issues? And then I will also go back to say, talk to me about your employee handbook. What does it say about termination? And if they have this big policy on, they're going to have a verbal and a written and a whole thing documented in a handbook, and they haven't followed that process, then the conversation might be, you're probably not ready to term this person yet because you need to go through the things that you said you were going to do. And then just making sure you've got all of the right posters and notifications. And again, if you have a physical workspace, you can have them up on a job board somewhere. If you're virtual, they can be on an intranet, but just making sure you've got communication and notices. And then you're going to ask, well, how do I know about all of those? You can subscribe to, different newsletters to stay up to speed on things. When you do go to the Minnesota, a lot of the Minnesota websites will ask, for you to join newsletters and things of that nature. And I know those can be overwhelming because we all have, if any one of you saw how many emails I have in my emails when you were seeing on my screen earlier, we get inundated with stuff. We certainly are trying to, provide some comprehensive information in newsletters and trying to get this stuff out. People like Tashi doing this call, like, hey, there's stuff coming up in Minnesota, come January, just having your ears and eyes open to things and having some trusted people around you that will also say, hey, do you know this is happening, is super helpful. And then, employees that you do have and managers, getting them engaged also in taking a look at things can be super helpful. If you do have a payroll service like ADP, Paychex, Gusto, all of those, normally they also stay abreast of what's happening and have newsletters and alerts. And again, a lot of times that becomes noise and you might not be watching for it. But every once in a while, take a look at what were those alerts that are either in the system or coming at me because maybe there is an updated law that I need to know about. And then here's some of my information just to get in touch with me. But yes, we'll make sure we've got some links and things that we've talked about here. So similar to Tashi and her team, we are an Elevate Hennepin advisor. I will share that we in November, we're probably getting pretty close to kind of tapping out with our hours for the year. But January is a new year, and so we expect to be super busy in January as well, helping people update handbooks with all the new stuff. But you can find Simon Says HR on the Elevate Hennepin Advisor Network. And if it's a small question that you have between now and then as well, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me. I know it's somewhat of a confusing time because there's a lot going on as well, and we're here to serve. We're here to serve and make sure that we're making it easy for you all. But love just to open up for other questions.
Yes, I popped some in the one in the chat, and then I have three things. So
Great.
one, could you make some recommendations for good CRMs that folks could use for performance reviews and documentation, et cetera? Because oftentimes the payroll software and timekeeping software, like they don't have the HR components unless, within them. And then two, outside of Elevate Hennepin, can people connect with you one-on-one? Where can we go to find your services outside of Hennepin? Elevate, because some of you may know that you only get up to 25 hours and I have to be my very, very transparent and candid here. I started my career in Target in HR, and I've done is a whole lot more than 25 hours that goes into ensuring you have a great foundation. But that's a great start as a small business.
Yeah.
And then I think I forgot my third question. So, are you able to share this? Are we able to share the presentation with folks that attended today, as well as put it on our platform so they can refer to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. So a CRM, so I totally agree with you, like ADP, Gusto, all those things. So when you have a software like that, you kind of pay to play. You pay for different software packages. Like, so if you have just payroll and then you add on recruitment and then you add on benefit admin, like then the cost of that software just continues to grow. And I don't know that any of them do the performance management for really just fantastically. And a standalone performance management CRM, not 100% sure I know that there was a great one out there either. The big thing I would say there is if you're doing performance reviews based on somebody's anniversary date, or are you doing everybody's, at a certain point in time? Just being mindful of what are those dates, and then how are you planning for it? And then what is it that how are we doing performance reviews? And so what does the structure of the performance review look like? Does the employee do a self-rating and then the manager does a rating? So those are some other pieces that I would say are part of the component, and we certainly could help on some of that. My other big piece on performance reviews is, what's happening weekly, monthly from one-on-ones, and how are people being people being recognized for, what they're doing well, areas that they need to improve in as the year is going on. But I also do really love performance reviews, and no surprise that many employees say, I haven't had a performance review in 5 years. So making sure that companies are doing them. And then truly maybe just, we do a lot in like Microsoft SharePoint sites or in Google sites, and so just being tracking what is the process, and then literally A through Z, here's our employees, here's when their date of review is due, and then has it been completed, and really just tracking it almost manually. So that was that question. And then the question on sharing, absolutely you can share. And how to get in touch. So simonsayshr.com is how you find our website. Dina@simonsayshr.com is my email. But yeah, feel free to reach out, and we do certainly work through the Elevate 25 hours, but outside of that, different scopes of how we plug in. And then Tasha, I'm sorry, what was the other question?
That was it. Just if you offer services that are more private direct services, because like I said, it's in some cases it's been built on forever. You might need to come in and work with an organization for a full year and kind of see how they operate
Yeah, we
structure
do.
them, so.
Yep. And then I also run for Elevate Hennepin. We have something called HR Next, which is a cohort. So it's for business owners, and it will start another one next year, but it's an 8-month program. And we really talk about everything from recruitment to interviewing to compliance handbooks to how am I developing and the performance reviews and stuff. So I throw that out there that applications will open up in the first quarter for that.
Awesome.
And then we do have a question in the chat. The question is, what are the best practices for protecting company data and client information when employees or contract workers work remotely?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So that comes down to, I mean, that comes down to, again, like what are your policies and procedures? Um, and then if you have, so technology is not necessarily my forte, but how are people, how are people accessing and, are they dialing to a server? How are they accessing the data? So be knowledgeable of that. Also, when you give, whether it be a contractor, and if you give out to employees, so typically that's another thing. A contractor typically has their own, computer and technology, and they're not asking for it. An employee, typically you are giving technology to them. And so understanding from a data perspective on how you can lock down that information. And then having policies and procedures in writing. Employees or contractors certainly can copy things down. I mean, that's always a risk, but really just having in agreements, your proprietary information and confidentiality there and having some teeth in those agreements. The other piece on just, company data. So with contractors, again, you can have contractor agreements with your 1099s if they're facing clients and having client data information. You owe it to your clients also to ensure that the 1099, the contractor, understands what they're responsible for. And then, do they have the right insurances in case there is a data breach or something? Those are things that could be part of that checklist. Did that help answer the question?
I believe it did, yes.
Great. Yeah, it's hard. Like I even, how many of us have sat at a Caribou or a Starbucks and gone, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this confidential conversation is happening in front of me." So it really goes back to training to make sure that your employees or contractors understand, like, hey, if you're talking about things that should be confidential, where are you having those conversations? I'll share right now, I'm doing this Teams meeting with you all. There's nobody in my house except for my dog. But if I had, people in and out of my house, it's also how am I controlling my environment and having confidential conversations with my clients. And so just being mindful of those situations as well. Well, I appreciate it. Tashi, did I get everything?
Yes, you did. I mean, this was really, really, really good. I can't wait for us to do it again. I can see us doing it for sure in first quarter again, just to make sure that folks are on track. If you have the time, of course, we'll talk about that. But no,
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I hope everyone else learned a lot. Yeah, thank you so much. It was so informative. I agree, TJ.
You are welcome.
I learned a lot as well. That's definitely being a small business person.
Yeah.
And then, just so you guys know that we have launched our new YouTube channel. So we did record this webinar. We will have it on our YouTube channel along with sharing the the deck and the links to registering. And another follow-up note is that tax season is right around the corner. So
Right.
on the 18th,